Hello and welcome to the first of our Muscular Dystrophy UK podcast series, Our Muscles Matter. I'm Martin Hywood and I'm your podcast host for today. I work at Muscular Dystrophy UK as the Partnerships and Ambassador Engagement Manager, and I live with limb-girdle muscular dystrophy. We're so excited to be launching this today. It's something we've been planning for a while. It's something we didn't want to rush into, and without getting the input of you, our community. Late last year, we did a podcast survey and we asked you whether you wanted a podcast, who you'd like to listen to, and what subjects you'd like us to feature, and we got a really great response. This podcast series has been shaped from your answers. It doesn't stop there. If anyone listening would like to send us your thoughts on what you would like to see featured going forward, listen out at the end for details as to how you can do this. We really want this to be your podcast. I don't want to keep my guests waiting any longer, as I know they're both keen to be part of the podcast today. Here with us are two prominent people in the muscle wasting community who have done a hell of a lot to raise awareness. My first guest is Chloe Ball-Hopkins. Hello, Chloe. Could you introduce yourself and tell our listeners a little bit about who you are?
Yes, of course. Nice to be here. Thank you for having me, Martin. So, as you said, I've been known by the community as Chloe Ball-Hopkins for many years, but actually got married a couple of years ago, so now known as Chloe Docker. I actually got promoted to the Board of Trustees last year and very much enjoy my new role for the charity. I was an ambassador for about 20 years prior to that. I was diagnosed with a form of the condition called Nemaline myopathy when I was 4. But the way I have the form of the condition is very abstract, I would say. So I don't follow the traditional trends you would expect for having Nemaline myopathy. So it's led to a very interesting life with the condition. And I've been very fortunate, though, to have a lot of very fun experiences, from being a para-athlete representing Great Britain in archery to working in journalism and media, and now currently working for I think 30 times award-winning PR and social media agency.
Wow. Thanks, Chloe. My second guest is Jed Thirkettle. Hi, Jed. Please tell us a little bit about yourself too. That'd be great.
That is a tough one to follow up from, but thank you for having me on. Yes, my name's Jed. I'm 25. I have auric congenital muscular dystrophy. I was diagnosed with the condition relatively late, I'd say, when I was 8 years old. Part of the reason for that is that I didn't necessarily follow a typical pattern of someone with auric and was still quite mobile and able, despite a few early warning signs. So, 8, had a muscle biopsy done and was delivered that news. Fast forward to today, I'm still very fortunate to be sort of mobile and living independently. I've been part of, on and off, I'd say, working with the charity to fundraise, both through my parents, who set up Team Jed when they first received the diagnosis, through to, I'd say, the past few years, I've been more involved at sort of figureheading Team Jed, doing some big fundraisers. I think we've raised nearly £250,000 now, and was honoured with the award of Fundraiser of the Year last year, which was fantastic. Professionally, I have just launched my own business called Juiced, which is a high-protein fruit juice. But I've spent 3 years in corporate sales before that, so just trying to transfer everything I've learned over there to do my own thing now. But it's lovely to be here today.
Wicked. So we're in great company then, because I working for Muscular Dystrophy UK, living with and also being a family from myself, I would consider you both ambassadors for the charity and put you quite highly on pedestals. So to kick the first episode off, we asked you guys to come up with top 5 challenges that we face living with muscle wasting conditions. Unfortunately, we haven't got time to discuss everything. But each one of us will be discussing a couple of responses for this, including me. Chloe, firstly, we'll go to you because you raised the point about travel and accessibility. So it would be great if you could kick off and tell us little bit about that.
Yeah, of course. I think travel and accessibility as like a all-encompassing topic is a huge one, and one that we could probably spend hours and hours, podcast after podcast, talking about, because everybody has such a varied experience. Even myself, I can take one train journey and have a glorious time, The next one, it can be crowded and I get elbows in the head. The person with the ramp doesn't turn up. You can have the same thing with planes. You can find taxis varying every time. And I think this is probably what the core of the issue is. Not every journey, not every building, it has the same thing in place for you. It doesn't have the same regulation, doesn't have the same experience. So you are constantly, I find for me personally, on edge about some of these things. You can try and plan the best of your ability and still turn up somewhere and it not be what you expected. The information's outdated, the building's changed, there's a barrier in your way, metaphorically and literally. That means you can't experience that the same way somebody who doesn't have your condition or disability. And I think that in itself is one thing, that you can plan and it's not what you expect. And then there's the flip side of, you can't just go, let's go do that today, and just go and be spontaneous. And that is something that I always have a bit of like a sigh about. Like, I can't just be like, ooh, bleep, let's go do that today. And just go and just have a moment where I'm like, yeah. And I think that's one of the few things that I think is a real shame with life, is that the travel and the accessibility of these things gets in the way of one of those very simple things in life that we should just be able to enjoy. And I still really scratch my head as to why in 2025 that is the case, and why with some of these things we seem to be going backwards, not forwards. I was in London on the weekend and some elements of it were brilliant. I wrote a post about it, which is getting a really good response in terms of brand new facilities doing better. But for some structures that are never going to change, how can they start trying to do at least their best? Be that the information that's available to you to make better decisions, so that you're armed with the information you need to do what you need to do to adapt, and they can adapt for you. Or just generally things like rights for flights that we're hearing about. They're advocating, they're doing their best. Sophie Morgan's doing her best. But yet you're hearing that actually some airlines are trying to revoke these things, not implement these things. And how is that happening in 2025?
Yeah, absolutely fantastic points. And you know, Jed, it's kind of a nice segue actually into you then, because you also mentioned about accessibility in your list, and what challenges do you come up against?
Yeah, I think the thing you mentioned there, Chloe, about London is one of the key things for me. So I live in London, and I live in the centre of London. I'm in Aldgate, for those who know it. And it's probably both the best and the worst city to be in for accessibility. Yep. As you know, we all love London for the old buildings, the history and the culture, but with those buildings means there's no lifts. With extortionate rental prices means people don't want to extend or expand, so they go down or upwards. And for me, that means that every restaurant I go to, every pub, every bar, not that I'm an alcoholic, but any place I do go, you have to usually go downstairs or upstairs to go to the toilet. And a lot of the time there's no alternative. There isn't a disabled toilet at all. And then, you know, when you're out in London, it's Thursday evening, you've gone for a bit of dinner, you're clambering your way back upstairs after using the toilet. It's the comments, you know, you get the business guys who've had a few drinks saying, oh, have you injured yourself? Have you hurt yourself? What's going on with you? Sort of, again, having a laugh because they don't know.
Or you're under the influence when you're not.
Yeah, exactly. Have you had one too many to drink? And they're having a laugh, you know, it's not from a malicious place. But it's that constant, you know what, the last thing I can be bothered with dealing with right now is this. You know, I just want to go to the toilet, come back, not have any issues. I think for me, the other thing that's a weird one that I battle with is that even when there's a disabled toilet for me to use, where I'm fortunately still mobile and walking, it's one of those where you can feel you might get judged if you go in to use that toilet. So it's that middle ground that I sometimes battle with, where I'm not disabled enough to get the all clear in a very strange way to go and use the facilities that I need to use, but then too, in inverted commas, disabled or find things too difficult to just go about and use everyone else's facilities as per usual. So, as you say, Chloe, some places and the newer builds, you know, the Elizabeth line, fantastic for me in terms of the escalators that I've been able to use as well as the lifts. But yeah, you go to book a restaurant or a pub, I mean, it's a real 50-50 flip of the coin. I turn up, are there going to be stairs there or not, basically? And it's at that point now where I learn which pubs have what stairs, and you start to avoid them because it's just, you can't be bothered, you know, especially if you're going out on a date. I don't want whoever I'm with to see me clambering up and down the stairs on the first date that I'm going on. It's these sort of things that shouldn't be an issue. Realistically, it shouldn't matter, but in your mind they do. So that's one of the big things I think about living in the city and getting around day to day. You know, sometimes seamless, other times it's a bit of a nightmare, to be honest.
It's all this energy you've used up before you've even started your day, or at the end of your day you've used your energy, and then it's using all this extra as well. Like, I went to London from here. I live in Weston-super-Mare, so I had a 2-hour train. It was one train, so on absolutely fine, because if you find you get on at an unmanned platform, actually in a way that can be better, because whoever's on the train has to get off and help you, so you're not actually waiting to see if someone turns up. So plot twist, actually quite a good thing. Got off the other end absolutely fine, but on the train, carnage. There's 2 wheelchair spaces in first class, there's 2 wheelchair spaces in the quiet carriage. For me in itself, that's my 2 choices. I either get put in first class and get a lovely cup of tea and a bit of cake, or I have to sit in silence. That's my 2 choices on the train. But it was a shorter train that morning. I got elbowed in the head twice on the train because people were standing around me. In a wheelchair, I'm at elbow height. So that was like fun in itself before I even got off the train. Then I went to use the disabled toilet, and the key on it was broken. So I'd used the radar key to get into it, but then when I tried to get back out of the toilet, the lock was broken. So somebody had to unlock it from the outside for me to let me back out of the toilet. And then the cab driver, although every taxi in London has a ramp to fold out of it, I could very much tell that it was very inconvenient for him to do so. So before I'd even got to my workplace, which was by that point a 3-hour journey, I'd used up probably half my energy for the day, just by existing as a disabled person in society. And it just shouldn't feel like that nowadays.
Mm-hmm. No way.
Yeah.
No, absolutely not. And you know, going back to your point there, Jed, about the feeling of guilt around being ambulant when you want to use disabled facilities. It's such a hard thing to deal with, because you know I'm ambulant around my house, but I'm a wheelchair user when I'm out and about. So I transitioned for me, but I've only just recently become a wheelchair user, a full-time wheelchair user outside of the house. But when I was ambulant and trying to use facilities in and around London, because I worked there, it's frowned upon, isn't it? Or you get really funny looks, and you try to justify it sometimes yourself. It's a really difficult one to deal with. But I think, again, a lot of these conversations lead on to my point was again similar. I work in London and visit London a lot with family. It's a great place to be, as Jess said. It's a really nice place to visit. But I just find some of the infrastructure very strange. I'll have a disabled bay that I can park my wheelchair accessible vehicle in, which is great because I am a driver and I don't really use trains and public transport. But what will happen is I'll park in the disabled blue bay, and then there's no drop curbs around me. So there's no opportunity for. So basically, I wheel out the back of my van in my wheelchair, and I'm stuck in the road until I can find the a drop curb, and sometimes that can be in the next street. So I think what we can get to here really is, I think that a lot of companies, a lot of industries need to make sure they have either a national disability charity like ours around the table, or people living with disabilities around the table, because some people will say this place or this space is accessible when we know when we get there it totally isn't. So I think that's a key takeaway point from that. So the second point is over to Jed, and Jed, you talk about the uncertainty of the condition and where it may go in the future. Could you talk about that a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those difficulties that I think everyone in the community probably feels to different degrees, or indeed deals with that very differently as well. For me, I think one of the difficulties is that there are very few people that have followed or have been in my same situation where they're still ambulant with Ulrich, sort of to mid 20s, and so I don't have. It's a strange way to put it, but like a blueprint to work off of, because the expected one didn't fit the mold. It didn't work for me. So, the doctors told me by this age, and this age, this is what will happen. And when those don't happen, you think, right, well, where does that leave me then? So, every year I go back to the doctors. They don't know. They've started asking me, oh, what are you doing? How are you finding it and stuff? It's like, this feels a little bit, I'm meant to be the other way around here. But I think the difficulty that I face is I don't know. It's a muscle wasting condition, and there is an inevitability to that. Your muscles will waste at some point. But I don't know for me whether that'll be because I might get seriously injured one day and then I'm unable to exercise and maintain the strength I do have. Maybe when I hit a certain age, my hormones drop off, and that then means that my muscles start to waste more rapidly. There's all these things that you don't know at what point, and I don't know when that wastage starts to occur more severely. Is it going to be a quick decline for me? Am I going to be fine until 50 and then bang? Or is it going to be from the age of 30 I start to feel myself slow down, just stay in debt, and you get time to adjust and deal with that? And also you don't know how you will react in that situation as well when you start to feel things become more difficult. How are you going to deal with that mentally? With the best will in the world, until you've actually been there, you don't know what you'll do or how you'll perform or what you'll say or feel. So that's one of the things I think. And, if I spend too much time thinking about it, it will get you down, in my opinion, because thinking about the future doesn't achieve anything. Anyone can have an accident, anyone can do this, anyone can do that. So it's just not thinking about it. But that's definitely, for me, one of those things that is a difficulty in just not knowing the future, not having that person to go, okay, that's what's going to happen. Because we all want that certainty in life. So you've got rough ideas, but it'd be great to sit down and go, okay, at 43, this happens. Then at 60, this happens. But obviously that's never going to be the case because everyone's so different.
And just for our listeners, just so as they know, myself and Chloe were nodding away like a pair of puppy dogs there.
It's like Jed's in my head.
Yeah, it's absolutely. Chloe, you obviously, I want to bring you into this and see whether you can concur with everything that Jez said. Is there anything you could add to this?
I very much feel the same as you. I was diagnosed at 4, but that came from a series of surgeries prior to that for a different condition, and them going, Chloe's muscles aren't repairing, let's do a biopsy. So if I hadn't have had the surgery, I don't know at what age I would have been diagnosed, because I was very ambulatory, very young. I used a wheelchair because of bone recovery, and then it was very much in and out of chair use. It was only secondary school that it became more and more that I use the chair, and even now I'm still much like Martin, ambulatory in the house, can still use crutches. Wheelchair is much more for out of the house. So I get what you're saying. If you look at a typical neuromyopathy case, it's definitely not me. I don't meet any of the criteria. I have a lot of abnormalities in what's going on with me and my condition, and that's come from things that have happened over the years with catching things like sepsis and external things that have happened that could have happened to anybody, and then the intersectionality of that with muscular dystrophy. So very much get what you're saying about, like, what's going to happen when, and can we understand that? And what you said about actually the fact that then what you do is you don't think about it. I do that.
Yeah.
And then people are like, how can you not? Like, how do you just keep going? Why are you so positive? And I'm like, because I can't. If I was to sit and think about the fact that I'm living with a condition that any day could stop me, like, I just couldn't live like that.
Yeah.
And the bit that hurts now that we're talking about it is the fact that I know there's people that do. there's other people out there who are living like us, who are struggling. And it's people like that who we need to reach more, who we need to support more. And that's why I'm really glad we have MD UK today, and we have the support system that we've been able to provide today for the people who do need it. Because I just can't imagine living with the uncertainty that we do without the mindsets that we do.
Yeah, I think I was gonna. I mean, a question for you guys. I don't know if you feel this, but I feel like every day you wake up and the day is like a risk reward ratio, and you're figuring out like cost benefit analysis of, okay, if I go there, I know there's stairs to the toilet, but that is a fantastic pub. Or if I go on this I don't know, paid excursion in Thailand to the waterfalls, but they don't know how many stairs there are and I can't communicate with them. Do I do it because it looks fantastic, but then find out I can't go down? Like everything at every degree is a risk reward of fun versus effort,
And I
essentially.
spend energy as well. So I'm like, right,
Yeah.
I know that if I do this, so my wedding day, for example, I was like, right, I need to rest for this amount of days before it, and the day itself is going to take up all of this energy, and then I'm going to have to rest for this many weeks after. But you do it because there's days in your life, if you're fortunate to have them, and I was on my feet for most of that day because I worked hard, done all the physio to do the walk down the aisle thing, to do the first dance thing. But you do, if you're fortunate enough to live with this condition and have those moments, you weigh up the energy you're going to spend for those moments. You spend it.
Yeah, wow.
And then you...
So there's a thing I use and have done since my diagnosis, and I've never really had a conversation with anybody about it, but it's body economics and or energy economics. So, for example, if I know that I need to take the recycling out and I need to put a new bottle of bleach in the toilet and I need to empty the dishwasher, it's a sort of circular movement around my house because I want to save my energy, but I want to get the tasks done, right? So I just think about everything I can do in one movement, similar to what sort of Chloe was saying there. But I also, it resonates when you talk about you want to do something great, but how much will that cost you physically? So, for example, as you mentioned, Chloe, you're getting married, and it's so much to prep that, and it's extremely exhausting. And then it happens, and then afterwards you have to have 3, 4, 5 days to recover. So. And also talking about the uncertainty of the future, if there was one thing I could tell my younger self, it would be about preparation of safety of the environment in which I live, because a lot of things that I feel of pain, etc., from muscular dystrophy are from associated falls. It's not directly the condition that makes me hurt or injured or time off work or whatever it may be. Is sometimes an associated dislocated knee or banged my head on a sideboard because I had a fall. So I would if I could tell my younger self anything, it would be to prepare my environment for the future. And the other thing is, my older brother is 2 years older than me, and he lives with the same condition, same type and everything. So I kind of get an insight into what the future looks like. And some might say that's a lucky thing to have, and some might say it's an unlucky thing to have. I don't know, but it is a guideline for me to see and make adjustments in my life as one of his carers as well. So yeah. So Chloe, it's back to you with the another challenge or thing that you come across, and that is to be married to a non-disabled man, and what preconceptions and things and things that are affect you around that.
I think this topic goes for anybody in what they call nowadays as like an inter-relationship, whether that be interracial, interable. Everyone likes to label these things nowadays. And I didn't even think to call it anything until I saw a video online of another couple who are interable. And my husband actually notices these things more than I do, because I just like to live in our little world. And then it's when he was like, "Did you notice those people looking at us?" And I was like, "Pardon?" And then I started noticing more and more, and this was quite early on to start with, and then I still see it now. And there's just this thing around the idea that, yes, he helps me, and there are times where it's more of a carer, companion situation, sometimes, when I'm unwell, but whose partner wouldn't look after them when they're unwell, sort of situation. But, you know, it might be things like we're walking along down the street. He doesn't always push me. He holds my hand and I just happen to be wheeling along because it works like that. My chair is light enough to do so, but which couple wouldn't be holding hands? Or, you know, he'll help me take my coat off and put it on the back of the chair. But again, that might just be being a bit of a gentleman. Not that I just need it. And it's just these things like you just see people being like, oh, good on you, lad, and things like that. And it's like we don't need those comments just because I'm disabled and he isn't. It doesn't make him. I don't know. There's just these comments, these things. There's like that are in there that I see and hear so many people with disabilities who have able-bodied partners saying, and I just don't know where it's come from. I think it's the media industry. I've talked a lot with other people in the media industry working in it, where it comes from the fact that the perception of people with disabilities is either villains, damsels, or inspirations. And it's that damsel picture, particularly with women, that I think is the problem. The fact that it's like, whew, we need to be looked after. And then when you see that interable relationship, it amplifies it, that he must be this kind of hero for looking after me.
Yeah.
When really that's not the case. Yes, okay, physically there's days where he does have to look after me more, but I make his lunchbox. I make sure he's got an outfit that coordinates. Is that not me looking after him too? It's just kind of a relationship, no different to anyone else's.
Excellent. I was going to say, and Jed, you know, I think you mentioned earlier about dating and stuff. What would you say about this?
It's a weird one. I think from a guy's perspective, I've got, you know, when you grow up, you see what a traditional relationship could or should look like. Should might be the wrong word, but you know, you've got like this male figure and female figure in a lot of relationships, and like you said, Chloe, what you see online. And I think the odd one to grapple with is that when you're trying to fulfill that male figure in my mind of like what a guy should be in a relationship, that also comes with being strong, you know, and able to look after yourself and defend yourself and this and that is very, very typical, you know, manly man thing that you see online. And that's one of those things where you think, well, actually, I can't tick off those criteria. Now, your partner might not mind, but I think growing up with what you see on social media and the media in general, that's ingrained in me. So when you think, right, I can't fulfill criteria A and B, or I'm not strong enough to do this, or, you know, if I ever go to move house with my wife down the line, I'll need to get the movers in, which a lot of people do. That's fine. But in your mind, it's like, well, no, that should be what a guy does and stuff. And that should be what your couples do together. So I think that's an interesting one to grapple with in terms of, you know, you feel like, okay, does this mean that I'm not quite enough, might be the word, or not fulfilling my side of the bargain? Are they not doing you a favour, but that's what other people might think, like you said, Chloe, is that, you know, you're, they are the hero, you know, they're there, they've been okay to take the hit and be with you and stuff. And it's a strange one, but then on the other hand, I think it's probably a great filter in that the sort of person who is bothered by that, or that does affect them, or it causes issues, them being with someone who is slightly different, has different needs, isn't probably the person you're going to want to be with anyway. So it's just a filter. That's the way I see these things. And often, like, I can't change the fact that I've got muscular dystrophy. So hopefully if we keep going, eventually at one point, fingers crossed. But I can change my perspective on things. So, okay, I've got muscular dystrophy. Well, that will just filter out people who aren't kind and generous and who aren't caring and want to be there, because there are certain things that you will need help with, especially as the uncertain future unfolds. So yeah, I think that's one of those things is the media and what role you feel you should be playing might change for people who have a muscle wasting condition. And that's okay. It's to change your perspective, not feel like you're not holding up your side of the bargain, essentially.
That's brilliant. And it's great points, Jed. It's really good. And what I would say is, in my experience, you know, similar to Chloe's, is, you know, I'm lucky to I met my wife before my diagnosis. We've been together 30 years, and so I'm extremely lucky, and she's quite pretty compared to me, right? So if I take a picture of us in London like I did at the weekend when we went to Tate Modern, and what happens is there's a picture and I'm in it and my wife's leaning down next to me in the wheelchair, and a member of the public's taking the picture, thank you very much, I put it on socials, and I'll probably get 40 comments, but sort of 18 to 20 of those comments will be something like, oh, you're punching well above your weight and things like that. And because there are so many, you think, is this just in jest and tongue in cheek, or are they making reference to the fact that I'm a person in a wheelchair and my wife is extremely pretty? And it doesn't make sense. They can't get their head around it. So that's I think a good way to finish this, actually, because we can go away and people can now talk about it, and we can leave it up to them to discuss how they feel with that last soundbite about our relationships. And unfortunately, that is all we've got time for today. It's been an amazing couple of guests that we've had today in Chloe and Jed. We can't thank you enough. It's a fantastic thing that you've done to be the first podcast for Muscular Dystrophy UK. If anyone's listening and you'd like to send in suggestions for future discussions or have any questions following the discussion we've had today for myself or Chloe or Jed, please contact us on podcast@musculardystrophyuk.org. Have a great day. We really look forward to the next time. And like I said, Jed and Chloe, thank you so much for your time and your insight and your conversation. It's been fantastic. We really appreciate it because, our muscles matter.